We'll look at Matthew chapter 21. And we'll look at verse 12 through 17. We'll look at Matthew chapter 21, verse 12 through 17. All right, Matthew chapter 1, from verse 12, it says, Jesus entered the temple area and drove out all who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. It is written, he said to them, my house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers. The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he did, and the children shouting in the temple area, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. Do you hear what these children are saying? They asked him. Yes, replied Jesus. Have you not read, from the lips of children and infants you have ordained praise? And he left them and went out of the city to Bethany, where he spent the night. And the title of today's message is He Overturned the Tables, and that's in verse 12. He overturned the tables. So in today's passage, we are reading about the indignation of Jesus that he has, right? The indignation of Jesus he has in the temple. But also it records the indignation of the Jewish authorities as well also. Right? It says that in verse 15. It says they were indignant. So we see the indignation of Jesus, and we also see the indignation of the Jewish authority. So, between the two, what was different about them? Right? What was different between the indignation of Jesus and the indignation of the Jewish authorities? We're going to look at that today. And we have to meditate on that for ourselves today, right? Because we also have indignation, anger. It shows in our words and in our actions. When it comes to our indignation and our anger, what is righteous and what is not? On this 40-day path towards Easter, I hope we can meditate on the cross of Jesus, who took all our anger, hatred, violence on the cross. He took that and he bore that on the cross, and I wish we can really meditate on that in today's message. So, how can we understand today's passage? So when you look at the Old Testament is very centered around the temple, right? The holy nation. Right? There's the holy nation centered on the holy temple, and this holy nation of Israel on this holy temple should give glory to God. Right? And so the holy temple and the holy nation should give glory to God, and that when you look at the Old Testament, it is writing a lot about this, the holy nation and the holy temple. So when you think about it, Jesus entering the holy temple in Jerusalem, the capital of this holy nation, Jesus is entering the holy temple in Jerusalem. How historic of the moment is that? Right? If all of the Old Testament is speaking about that, it's writing about that history, the history of the holy nation and the holy temple. And then finally, the Son of God is revealed, and now he's entering Jerusalem, and he is going into the temple for the first time. How precious and how historic a moment is that? But then what happens as the Lord enters that temple? Well, what it records here is that he sees money changers and merchants, right? Merchants and money changers. So, what was the reason for that? Why, what was the situation? What's going on here? So long ago, for the Israelites going to Jerusalem, right? It's the big capital city. You can imagine it's like this big trip. So imagine you are an Israelite, but you live in sort of a faraway city, far away from Jerusalem, in some countryside. You're a fisherman, you're a farmer, or whatever it is. And so you're making a big trip, a big family trip. Right? And that's what it basically is. You're making the big family trip to go to the big city of Jerusalem, the capital. and you want to go to the temple. You want to go to the temple there, right? This is your faith. You want to go to the temple there, and you want to give offering. You want to worship God in that holy temple. So what the Jewish authorities did is they took advantage of this situation. So if you're going into the holy temple in Jerusalem, then you should bring the offering, right? But what the Jewish leaders would do would be that they would find technical flaws with the offering. So usually you would come before the temple and give like a dove or a lamb, and you would give that, right? And so, maybe you're a farmer and you have these things and you're bringing that in as an offering. Well, the Jewish leaders, what they would do is, there's so many laws in the Old Testament, 600 laws in the Old Testament, and so, all these things about offering, and so they would look at that offering and say, no good, no good. They would find some technical flaw in the offering and say, no good, and they would reject the offering. So, really, when you think about this, is this right, right? I mean, is this right? What the Jewish leaders were doing. I mean, think about it. Is offering about the technicality of the law? Like, this and that, and how I interpret, and the technicality behind the law. It's not about that, right? When we give offering before God, when the Jews give offering before God, it is about the heart, right? I'm giving. There's blood sacrifice. I'm giving this. And it's all about the heart. Offering is about the heart. But the Jewish leaders didn't want to make it about that. Why was it that they were finding these technicalities behind the offering? Well, this was all about money. Right? It was all about money. So what would happen was these money changers and merchants, they would stand in front of the temple. They would be in the temple court area, in front of the area where you're supposed to give offering. So the Jewish leaders would reject any other offering, but if it came from the merchants in front of the temple, then it's okay, right? That offering is okay. There was probably some way they could tell, right? And so if it was from that merchant, then it's okay. And so how then did these merchants get the place in front of the temple? That really good place in front of the temple so that the offering would be acceptable? Well, they paid bribes, obviously. This is what they did. They paid bribes to the Jewish leaders so that they could be in front, and only their offering would be accepted. So really think about this. How wicked of a system is it? Taking advantage of holy faith, right? It should be holy faith that is pure in having a relationship of love with God and giving that offering, but taking advantage of that, and it's about money, power. It's depraved sin and corruption of the holy temple. It is the holy temple with a heart coming from far away from the countryside to Jerusalem to the holy temple. It's with this kind of heart, but they are taking advantage of it. The Jewish leaders were. So, this is the kind of situation that the Lord is walking into. So think about it. We can really understand why. Now we can begin to understand why Jesus overturned these tables. We shouldn't really misunderstand this. Don't misunderstand this as the short temper of Jesus. Oh, he got angry, and it's the short temper of Jesus. How is it that we must understand this? So, one thing I like to do whenever I read this particular passage is I like to read the sort of the miracle. It's like a miracle that is sort of like a parable related to what just happened. So this is in verse 18 and 19. So if you go to Matthew 21, and go down to verse 18 and 19. This connects with the previous passage. In verse 18 it says, "Early in the morning, as he was on his way back to the city, he was hungry. Seeing a fig tree by the road, he went up to it, but found nothing on it except leaves. Then he said to it, 'May you never bear fruit again.' Immediately the tree withered." So, very interesting kind of miracle happened, right? So it's the miracle of the fig tree withering all of a sudden. Jesus, he rebuked the fig tree and it just withered. So how can you interpret that, and how does it relate to the previous passage? So long ago, it was very common for a hungry traveler to pick fruit from a tree. I mean, it was legal, right? If there was a tree overhanging onto a road and you were walking, then you could just pick the fruit and then you could eat it, right? And so it was very common for a hungry traveler to pick the fruit from the tree and take it, right? And so fig trees in particular, they had huge big leaves, and you could tell it was a fig tree from far away. It had huge big leaves. But a fig is really small, Right? A fig is really small, and the color is a little bit dark, so you can't really see it well from far away. If you're like on the road and then far away is that fig tree, you can't really see it. You just see you know it's a fig tree by its leaves, but you can't really see the fruit, right, until you get up close. So imagine Jesus walking up. So from far away, he's hungry. He's seeing a tree from far away, and it's a fig tree, and he's anticipating the fruit from it. But he walks up to it, right, and he finds no fruit. Right? He finds no fruit on it. Right? That's what this is. This is a fig tree without fruit. And so how does this relate to Jesus coming to the temple? So Jesus, think about this, the Lord coming to this earth and coming to the Jewish temple in Jerusalem, the holy temple. Right? And so, there is this anticipation, there is this excitement. Right? The coming of the Lord to the holy nation, to the holy capital, to the holy temple. But what does he find in that temple? Well, he finds the money changers, he finds corruptions, he finds the merchants, right? The temple that should be fruitful and full of worship and holiness and a loving relationship with God is instead a sinful and depraved place. And so, what does he do to the fig tree? The fig tree, it immediately just, withers away. There's judgment for the fig tree, it just withers away. And there's something like this happening in the temple as well too. This sinful, depraved place that is not bearing fruit, what must happen? It's a corrupt system, right? And so it needs to be overturned, right? It needs to be overturned. The tables need to be overturned. So think about this. If there is a corrupt system out there, right, how do you solve it? Right? How do you solve a very corrupt system? Even out in the world, if there is some system out there that is completely corrupt out there, how do you overturn a corrupt system? So are you going to solve it one by one? Let's make minor changes here or there. Let's fix this, fix that, and then we're going to fix the system? Are you going to fix a corrupt system, a corrupt, powerful, depraved system by making minor changes? It's not going to happen. Right? It doesn't happen like that. It doesn't even happen like that in the world, right? Think about it. Even Rome. Rome was this great, systematic, powerful nation like that. And what happened to it? And how did this corruption of Rome get overturned? It was all of a sudden. All at once. It was overturned. It was overturned completely. So it's like that in history. If there is a systematic sin of slavery, right? Human slavery, controlling another human like that, what did it take to overturn it? It took a violent civil war in order to overturn it. A decade ago, more than a decade ago, there was systematic banking issues, all these loans and all these things, right? And what did it take to overturn all of that? It took a market crash. We needed to just break and crash the system. It's corrupt. It's bad. We need to overturn the system, right? If there's something depraved and corrupt and overturned, it needs to wither away. Right? It needs to be overturned. The tables need to be overturned. So, when you look at the Lord and what's going on here, this is not an impulsive, misguided, short-temper kind of act here. It's not that. It's not that kind of anger. It's not that kind of short-temper indignation that we usually think of, right? This is Jesus confronting this corrupt system. He's overturning the table. He is confronting this. So, what kind of indignation is the Lord? What kind of indignation is this of the Lord? This is righteous indignation. This is righteous indignation coming from a place of love for God's kingdom. Confronting systematic evil, right? It's confronting systematic evil here. So when you look at that, how holy is this in actuality? When you really examine it, really come to understand this, it's something very holy, what is happening here. Jesus, he said, blessed are those who mourn. This is in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5. Blessed are those who mourn. So he is saying, be sad about this fallen world. If there is a fallen world that is sinful and corrupt, we must have a mourning heart for that. Blessed are those who mourn. So, we have to ask ourselves too, do we have a very serious heart towards the fallenness inside of this world? Are we mournful? Are we sad about this fallen world? Do this this passion and this indignation that this world cannot be the way and how corrupt it is. Honestly, when you look at most of us, we don't have this. Right? We don't have a mournful heart. We don't have an indignant heart for this world. Instead, we just become part of this world. We just, rather than really overturning this corrupt world, it is just about, being a part of this world. Really, how systematic is the sin slavery inside of this world, enslaving us in that sin? We're enslaved to money. We're enslaved to lust, power, greed, celebrity, all of these things. I work a bit in the field of education, so I know this. It's like the system in education. You look at it, these huge college costs, these debts, and then there's people graduating, and then they say, this useless degree I got. People say that too after they graduate, and then what happens? So they go into this huge college cost, get this huge debt and this degree that they have, and then what do they get out of that? So they take this degree, and then they go to the company, and then they just get enslaved in the company. So every day I'm just enslaved to another person, and what is that other? So this other person, this company, and these executives and these companies, what are they in it for? It's for greed, right? Make money, greed. It's for themselves. It's for this. So we've got this whole system. Out of that, and then, what do people do? People just get lost there. People get lost in the systematic sin of the world. People are lost in the systematic sin of entertainment, of celebrity, of politics. I talked about the education industry, but it's like that all the way through business, entertainment, celebrity, politics. It's all the same, really, when you look at it. And then being enslaved in it, pass the time doing useless, meaningless things. Ask yourself really about this, to yourself today, really about this. Jesus overturning the tables. Blessed is the heart that mourns for this world. Ask yourself this. Do I have the righteous indignation of Jesus, the mourning heart? Or am I just part of it? Am I just part of the satanic system that is out there, that is corrupt inside of this world? Right? Which one? Which one am I? Right? Which am I part of? Right? Which am I on the side of Jesus, or am I on the side of this corrupt systems in this world? If so, how can we fix this even in our lives? Right? Even in our lives, how can we fix this? If we recognize this and we repent, how can we fix this in our own life? We have to come to see it's not about small changes, actually. Small changes are good. I'm not saying that small changes aren't good. Small changes are good, but what even more critical that needs to happen in our life, we need to overturn. We need to overturn the tables of my life. Right? We need to have faith. Faith is leaping out. It's a leap of faith. It's getting out of it. The tables of my life need to be overturned. I really wish we can meditate on the overturning of the tables that Jesus had. So let's continue on, and we'll read verse 14 and verse 15. The blind and the lame came to him at the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the teachers of the law saw the wonderful things he did, and the children shouting in the temple area, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. So at the temple, the blind and the lame came to Jesus. And the children sang songs and praises to the Lord. It's great, right? Jesus came into the temple. He was healing blind and lame. And so the children are singing praises to the Lord. And this is what's happening inside of the temple. It's a very extremely wonderful testimony. The sick being healed and the children singing glory and praises to the Lord. It's a very wonderful testimony. But then, the religious leaders, looking at this wonderful scene, did they see it in that way? It clearly records here in the Bible, right? So it says the chief priest, in verse 15, the chief priest and the teachers of the law saw all these things, these wonderful things. They were indignant. Right? They saw all these wonderful things, and they were indignant. Right? So, we come to find that this indignation, right, that the Pharisees had, the teachers, authorities had, is different than the Lord's public indignation. It's a very, very different thing. It's a very, very different thing here. The Jewish leaders, their indignation is very selfish. It's about their situation and their authority. Actually, think about this actually. How absurd is this situation? They have anger. They're indignant. They have anger over, some people, sick people being healed and some children praising. I mean, they have anger over this. It's a very good, holy, great situation, but they have anger over that. Why? Why do they have anger over that? Well, it's that they're looking at this situation, but they're only viewing it from their perspective in a very bad way, right? In their bad way. This is why, right? They feel like it's a threat. Like they see someone else doing great things before God, but they think, oh, I'm the religious authority. We're the ones that judge the offering coming in, and we're the standard for worship, and someone else who's not one of us is getting praise from others. Well, they think it's a threat, and they're viewing it in a bad way. This is why they are indignant. So, really, this anger, right? How absurd is this? This anger at a good situation because they're viewing it in a bad way. Really, this happens to us. Last week we spoke about Cain. So God accepted Abel's offering, but not Cain's, right? So actually, this is a good thing. It's a very sinful couple, and then they had 2 children, Cain and Abel. So should God really accept any of their offerings? No, but he accepted Abel's. And so this is a great blessing in the love of God. But Cain, he's angry. He's lost in jealousy. Why not mine? He views a blessed situation in a bad way. For him, he should view it as a great opportunity that I can show humbleness, right? I can show humbleness, learn from my younger brother Abel, and then be better. But he doesn't do that. He gets just lost in himself, angry, right? He has this depraved anger, right? There's a difference between righteous anger and depraved anger, right? He has depraved anger for God and for his brother, and then he kills his brother Abel, and this is what happens, right? Rather than looking at the situation as a blessed opportunity, he looks at it in a bad way. So, this happens, right? This happens. We misunderstand God. We misunderstand the situation. I'll show you one other situation that was misunderstood. If you look in Matthew chapter 20, Jesus talked about this. So Matthew chapter 20, we read this last year. It was a sermon I delivered last year. Matthew chapter 20, verse 1 and 2. So, for the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner who went out early in the morning to hire men to work in his vineyard. He agreed to pay them a denarius for the day and sent them out to his vineyard. So, landowner calls workers, you should go work in my vineyard. He says, I'll give you a denarius, 1 day's pay. So he calls some people early in the day. Later in the day, he calls more and more people, and he all agrees to pay them a denarius throughout the day. But what happens? At the end of the day, the owner goes and he gives the wages to these people, right? To his workers. And then, so the first ones who came first, he gives them the wages, he gives a denarius. He gives the last ones first and he gives them a denarius. And then the ones who come first are indignant about this. They're angry about this. Why are you paying them the same as us? These other people came later in the day. They worked like 1 hour. But, you're giving them the same pay as us. And if you look in verse 13 through 15. But he answered one of them, "Friend, I'm not being unfair to you. Didn't you agree to work for denarius? Take your pay and go. I want to give the man who was hired last the same as I gave you. Don't I have the right to do what I want with my own money, or are you envious because I'm generous?" So, they agreed from the beginning. I'll work for a denarius. They got a denarius, right? They got it. God is not being unfair. The landowner is not being unfair. They got what is promised. But you're angry. What are you angry about? You're angry about generosity, my generosity. It's a good thing. The landowner's generosity is a blessed thing, but they are angry because of my generosity. So, what I'm trying to say here about Cain and the blessed situation that he is in, and him and Abel together, about even this generosity and this blessed situation of God's love, how often do we view a blessed situation with a bad viewpoint? Right? We're lost in ourselves. We view a blessed situation with a bad viewpoint. The Son of God came, but how were the Jews? They were indignant, and they had hatred for Jesus. Let's turn to John chapter 15 and verse 25. John chapter 15 and verse 25. It It says, "But this is to fulfill what is written in their law. They hated me without reason." So the Lord said they hated me without reason. So it's a blessed situation, but they're lost inside of themselves and they hate. It's a hatred without reason. You know, you might be confused by this. What do you mean there is no reason? The Jewish leaders, they had this and that reason, they said this and that about why they killed Jesus. But they had their reasons. Well, Cain had his reasons why he killed Abel. Oh, he's so jealous and he has bad thoughts about this and that, and he's angry at God. And the early workers, their anger, they had reason too. They had their reasons too. Why the owner is giving them, but we bore the heat of the day. They're angry at the owner because of that. But in actuality, when you look at these reasons really aren't reasons at all. The reasons are really just people, them being stuck, us being stuck in my own head. Right? That's what hatred without reason means. It's me being stuck in my own head. It's not really a reason. Unfair. I was promised you a denarius and you got a denarius. Right? It's a blessed situation, but I'm making something up in my head. I'm making something up in my head about a bad situation. Us claiming the reason for hatred. All my reasons, Cain's reasons for his violence, right? Is trying to lessen the impact of his anger and his sin. He gives all these reasons to try to lessen that impact, but you cannot. No matter what you do, you cannot lessen the impact of it. It is still sin-depraved hatred. Hatred without reason. It's made up anger for made up reasons. Meaning it's completely false. And that is why it is, the Lord said, when it comes to this, the world hated me without reason. That is the cross that the Lord bore. It is hatred without reason. So, it's this hatred without reason he carried on the cross. Really, he carried all of our hatred without reason. Yes, it's the same for us too. We have hatred without reason as well. Now, how is it? It's that, really, when you look at our lives, everything about our lives, we are so blessed. We are so blessed inside of our lives. It's a blessed situation. My life and my situation is a very, very blessed situation. Actually, the very fact that we are even alive, is a blessed situation. God created us. He put God's image, His own image inside of us. His own image, the Spirit, right? We have God's traces of eternity right inside of us. He set eternity in our hearts. And it's so blessed, just the fact that God gave us our lives. And then, really, when you look at our lives, there's so many blessed things about our life. No matter how you look at it, this way and that way, and when you pray about this, you really know that God blessed us so much. Count the blessings. Really count the blessings that God gave us so much in our lives. The person of faith is very optimistic like this. We look at our life, the one who truly has faith and really receives God's love with faith, looks at our lives and counts the blessings so that it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable how many blessings God gave us inside of our life. That is what faith is. That is what having God's love in us is. But then, really, do we look at it that way? Do we look at the blessed situation of our life that way? No. Like the Jews, instead, we have jealousy. Maybe looking at others, being lost in ourselves, hating God without reason. We look at blessing in a cynical way. We get lost in our thoughts. We end up with hatred without reason. We have to ask ourselves today, am I treating God this way? Right? Really, this is a sickness that we can have. It's especially, I think, sometimes the sickness of those of us maybe who've walked longer in faith. I want to say that to the ones who've walked longer in faith, is that we're too smart. With so many reasons that aren't really reasons, we hate God. We can come up with so many reasons that aren't really reasons. That's what hatred without reasons means. It's like reasons that aren't reasons, right? And we become blind to the blessings of God. It's like this. Reasons that aren't really reasons, what happens to us? It's that, okay, we know that God exists, and He's in my life, but then I still feel hatred towards God, like anti-God feelings in me. We get lost in these reasons and we're blind in the blessings of God. Today, these 40 days before Easter, we really need to meditate on this if we are like this. This is the cross the Lord had to bear. Our loving God has blessed us with so many blessed opportunities in front of us. Will I open up my heart to God? Or will I just get lost in this? I wish we can open up our hearts in faith to Him. Finally, let's look at the last part of today's message. We'll look in verse 16 to 17. It says, do you hear what these children are saying? They asked Him. Yes, replied Jesus. Very cynically they ask, do you hear what these children are saying? Yes, replied Jesus. Have you never read, from the lips of the children and infants you have ordained praise? And He left them and went out to the city of Bethany where He spent the night. So the Jewish leaders, they're very critical of the praise of the children. What are they really doing? They're just singing praises to the Lord. It's the honest truth from their heart to sing praises from the Lord. But what do these wise, long-time believers, these religious leaders, what do they see? They don't see it like that. Very cynically they ask, do you see what they're doing? No, they're blinded by their anger and their hatred without reason for Jesus. We really have to meditate on this 7 times over and over again. We really have to meditate on this word over and over and over again. This anger, this hatred without reason that we have, it can enter us. We need to realize this kind of devilish way. This hatred without reason can enter us. It can rule us. It can rule our hearts. It can rule our faith, and we just get lost in this maze of self-centeredness. We become cold, and we become isolated. We become alone, and we become blind to God's blessing in my life. We become blind to God completely in my life. But the children aren't like that. The children, they're blessed, right? Blessed are the children. I think, really Jesus, he blesses the children in that one passage, right? Children, they see things sort of like honestly and simply.